Okay, so I want to talk about reading the Bible. Whenever you read the Bible, it's very important that you understand what you're reading and you understand context and like just a bunch of other things. So getting into it, people often read the Bible for like one of three reasons: because they want to grow a relationship with God, because they want to understand something, right? Like why God would do something, why something works the way it does, why this happens the way it does, or because they want to prove a point. That's usually the third reason, and the third reason is really popular. So it usually goes really well with atheists and people from other religions who try to prove a point. And again, I'm gonna sit here and tell you now, you're not gonna prove any point because we've been doing this for about 2 decades now. Not decades, sorry, 2 millennia now. So there's no point you're gonna prove. Humans have been trying to, I guess, judge God for about 2K years now, and it hasn't worked. They haven't succeeded. Right? A common thing you'll hear is, well, if God's all good, then why does he allow bad to happen? One of the most ignorant questions I've ever heard in my life, honestly. Genuinely. And that's not me trying to sit there and say it's a dumb question. It's just completely ignorant because to think of that question and think it's a good question is just odd to me. And I won't say it's an odd, no, let me rephrase that. Let me take that back, actually. That question's fine to ask. 100% is fine to ask. But the problem I have is that when people ask that question, they've already like assumed in their minds that that just means God's evil if bad happens, which doesn't make any sense because just because good exists doesn't mean there shouldn't be any bad. Matter of fact, we know things are bad because there's good. But to make it simple for you, real simple, if God is all good and bad things are happening, then it can't be coming from God. If humans are sinful and sin leads to bad things happening, where are the bad things coming from? That's the simplest, like, step by step way to help you tumble along to why bad things happen. It's because of humans beings. It's not because of God. It's because of humans. God gave us free will, and guess what humans decide to do with it? Whatever they want to. In Judges, one of my favorite books, not my favorite, but one of my favorite Old Testament books, simply because of the fact that it highlights that humans are just utterly evil. People, for some reason, today want to argue humans aren't evil, that we're actually nice if we're treated correctly or we're treated right, which isn't the case at all, because there are plenty of people who are brought up in nice homes and perfectly fine neighborhoods, establishments, and whatnot, whatever you want to use, whatever fancy terminology you want to use, and they become killers, they become rapists, they become just evil people, people who have bad spirits in them. They are just mean people, right? Don't get me wrong. If you grow up in a bad area, in a bad relationship, in a bad parenting household, that's gonna affect you. But guess what? It doesn't matter. People are just evil. Like everyone is evil. I'm evil. Like I'm not excluded from that. Every human being is evil because we all fall short. And I shouldn't say fall short. We all just do things that God commands are evil. We all lie. We all steal. We all are verbally abusive to each other in some way. Those are all things we do every day, right? We all just have moments where we just want to kill somebody. And I won't say that. We all have moments where we just have utter hate for somebody or disgust for somebody in our hearts and our minds, and we think terrible thoughts about that person. That's not good, in my opinion. Oh, I didn't do anything. Okay, well, you didn't do anything, but if you had the chance, you probably would. You know how many times, like, I've seen or heard or just been able to tell that if someone who was mad at me for whatever reason had the chance, they would hurt me, right? Now, it's different for each person. Not every person has murder on their mind every time you like cut them off in traffic or step on their shoe. But at the end of the day, people aren't good. You can't sit there and tell me that people are good. Look at history. If you really believe humans are good, look at history. The Bible's history as well, by the way. People want to sit there and say don't read the Bible because it's not historically accurate. It's very historically accurate. Even atheist scholars agree it's historically accurate. So I don't want to hear that argument anymore. It's just BS. I'm gonna keep it a buck with you. It's very historically accurate, right? It's up to you to try to sit there and look at the sources that confirm it's historically accurate. But anyway, besides the point, the biggest thing I want to talk about today, because I can talk about all day how humans are evil and how we fall short of God's standard. And again, falling short of God's standard isn't, oh man, I got to F on my test, so I got to try again. No, again, God has a standard for a reason. The same way the law is a standard. It's a standard you're supposed to uphold. And people fail the standard of the law all the time. For example, People all the time go over the speed limit. All the time. That includes me, right? People all the time run red lights, don't come to a full stop. That's just one example of how people don't uphold the law or the standard to a T. But I could go on and on about that. My main point today is when it comes to reading the Bible, because people will read the Bible and they'll always, and here's where it starts. Whenever people read the Bible, they sit there and say that whatever happens in the Bible, I have to take straight to God. And when I mean that, I mean, like, for example, if I'll give an example, if a tribe is eviscerated or if someone's raped, their first thing is, why would God allow that to happen? And then their second thought is, okay, well, if this happened, that means God can't be good. So, first thing, there are a lot of times in the Bible where tribes are not tribes, no, peoples. I'll just say peoples, honestly, because not every, I don't want to categorize everything as a tribe, but peoples are decimated, and there's reasons for that, right? Sometimes it's because people do it. Sometimes it's because God instructs people to do it. Sometimes it's just because that just happened. Again, the Bible accounts of history. So there's going to be times where you see people get raped. There's going to be times where you see people get killed. There's going to be times where you see people cheat on other people because they just cheat on other people. And when I mean cheat, I mean obviously in relationship cheat, not cheat like they cheated in a game of dice. There's going to be times where you see wars happen and people die and children die and so on and so forth. For example, Judges is a perfect example of that. Deuteronomy is another example where God instructs people to do that. So in Deuteronomy, there are plenty of times where God instructs them to go destroy a nation. And the reason he does this isn't because they said mean things about me and I want you guys to get rid of them. No, the reason he did this is because these nations were evil. They were sacrificing their kids and performing abortions. They would take the babies out of the womb as early as possible and burn them alive and then beat on drums so loudly that the babies wouldn't be able to be heard while they're being burned alive. They would have sex with animals. They would do a bunch of other things that I'm not going to mention because it's not necessary to mention. You can guess. You can guess. Anyway, they practice, you know what? No, I'll go ahead. They practice necromancy. They practice necrophilia, pedophilia, all the big no-nos, right? These weren't nice tribes who were just minding their own business. And on top of the fact, God told those peoples and nations multiple times to stop doing what they were doing because it was evil and wicked and it wasn't how he intended humans to act. And they didn't listen. So what God said was, okay, since you don't want to listen, I'm going to use the people, the Israelites, who I've taken out of Egypt from slavery, and I'm going to allow them to act as my judgment upon you. Right? Other scenarios where wars happen. In Judges, there was a war between the 12 Israelite tribes, right? It was 11 of the tribes versus one of them because one of the tribes, the Benjamite tribe, allowed multiple tribes people to commit sexual assault and murder on a woman. The woman was a concubine of a man. The man was threatened to be raped by the men of the Benjamite. This was a city in the area given to the Benjamites. So one of the areas the Benjamites had as a inheritance, this man and his concubine went there. And when they got there, they stayed over at someone's house that night. The people of the Benjamite the Benjamites in that area knocked on the guy's door, who the man and the concubine were staying in, and they said, "Okay, bring that man out here so we can rape him." That's exactly there's no other way to phrase it. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted to rape him. Long story short story, he said no. They wouldn't leave him alone, and they were obviously intent on causing harm. So instead, which I don't know why he did this, but he did. And again, one thing I want to make clear is that specifically in Judges, one of the big themes of Judges is that this is how humans act when there's no God to enforce things or to tell them what to do. One of the things it continuously says is that people did what they saw fit. People did what was right in their own eyes. And so they did. And for some reason, this man's, in his own eyes, he thought it was right to send his concubine out to the men, even though he knew she would die, potentially. Right? And the men decided it was right in their own eyes to rape her and murder her for whatever reason. The next night, or the next day, he finds her body at the doorstep, and she's dead. He cuts her body into 12 pieces, and he sends them out to 12 nations of Israel. And the 12 nations of Israel, for some reason, that's what it took to wake them up and say, we have strayed so far from God, we got to lock in. I'm not going to lie to you. So they go to the Benjamites, and they say, yeah, what your guys did wasn't okay. You're going to have to give them to us so we can punish them. The Benjamites say, no, that's not going to happen. No, you're going to have to, over my dead body. I would rather die. That's what they said. So, long story short story. The other 11 Israelite tribes fight the Benjamites. They're losing. They keep asking God, should we go fight them? And he says, go fight them. And they keep losing. The third time they ask him, he says, okay, if you fight them this time, you'll win. They defeat the Benjamites, but they've eliminated a lot of men. They've eliminated a lot of Benjamites. A lot of them. And they're sitting there weeping because we don't want to destroy an entire tribe of an entire nation of our tribe. We don't want to destroy them, right? So they weep to God and say, God, why did this have to happen? Why does this have to happen? And I'll give you the answer why it happened, because they kept on straying farther from God. The book of Judges is interesting because God would appoint judges over people, but as soon as the judge would die, the Israelites would turn back to evilness and sin and false gods, and they'd fall and stray further from God than before. So that's why it happened, because they continuously strayed away from God, and things got worse and worse and worse to the point of where that what happened that day was okay, apparently, until they said it wasn't okay. But anyway, again, the big highlight of the book of Judges is that things happened because people did what was right in their own eyes, not what God told them to do, not what God instructed them to do. So, that being said, again, when you read the Bible, you need to understand a lot. It's not math, so don't get me wrong. It's not going to be super complex. There's a lot of things in the Bible that happen, but it doesn't get super complex. It's never going to be a situation where you're trying to have to figure out the quadratic equation of why Jesus told that person to do this. That's never going to happen. I shouldn't say almost never. That's not going to happen. It's not a math game. It's just an understanding thing. For one of the things you'll understand is that when you read the Bible, you'll see a lot of things that are just weird. For example, in the book of Ruth, Ruth lays at a man's feet so that she can propose to him. That's me oversimplifying it. What happened was Ruth was a widow. There was a guardian redeemer. Guardian redeemers were people in the family who would be the next of kin. So basically, if your brother died and you were the guardian redeemer, you would marry your brother's widow. And then you would continue on your brother's lineage. That's how that worked, right? That's how they did things in that time period. So how that worked is that whenever a woman laid at the man's feet, that was the symbol for the man to say, oh, well, she's asking me to redeem her. She's asking me to marry her, so like, I can protect her and all that. That's how that worked. So how that would be initiated, she would lay at his feet, and if the man saw her there and he put his cloak over her to cover her so she could actually be warm when she sleeps, that was how that worked. That was it. That was sealed. Then they would go to a court of law and they would say, okay, we have 100 of you guys here. You all witness the fact that I'm marrying my brother or my closest of kin's widow. You've all witnessed this. We've all witnessed this. Okay, that's how it is. And they did other weird things too. Like, for example, for some reason, whenever that happened, they would give it sandals. I don't know why, but they would give each other sandals. I'm not kidding. They would hand a sandal to somebody and say, yeah, this is my sandal. This is agreed. Yep, we're good. So, again, when you read the Bible, genuinely read it to read it. I'm telling you, man, it's interesting. Don't get me wrong, there are a lot of really, really, really hard to get through parts. I won't say they're boring, because they're not, to me at least. Maybe they were when I was younger. But again, when you're reading the Bible, truly read it to understand, to enjoy it. Obviously try to learn. For Christians, it's a little bit different. You should be going in a relationship with God. But for atheists, you might learn something. And I won't say you won't. You might. You will. You definitely will. Because one of the things to understand is that maybe the world isn't so good. Maybe it's not as good as we think it is. Maybe people today aren't as good as we think they are. Because one of the things that people have this common notion of is, oh, people back then were so evil and the stuff they did was barbaric, as if the stuff we do now is much different. But that's a whole different discussion about that. Like, I don't understand. People aren't that different from now and then. People were racist then, people are racist now. People sexually assault people then, they sexually assault people now. People stole then, people stole now. Like, people aren't any different. People don't change. People stay the same. And that being said, people often get worse, again, in societies where there's no fear of God. And Judges is the perfect example of that. They feared God so little that their society got to a point where a bunch of men were able to rape a woman and murder her and do whatever diabolical things they did. The book doesn't go in description of what they did, because we don't know. We don't need to know. I don't want to know. But the point is that whatever they did to her, she was dead by the time they were done. They strayed away from God for so long, but that society allowed that to happen. And there are societies today that allow that to happen too, unfortunately. But anyway, the point is, just read the Bible and understand it. I promise you're going to be confused if you just read the Bible and just read it, one, just to read it, and two, without trying to understand it. The same way you'd be really confused if you read a science book one day and didn't try to do research on it. Like, I'm not sitting here telling you have to sit here for an hour doing research on the Bible, but I'm telling you it's interesting. It's interesting. I'm telling you, get engaged with the Bible. And the thing is, this is historical stuff. A lot of the stuff has like documentation. A lot of things that happen in the Bible historically line up with things that happen in real life. So it's not some mumbo jumbo that someone wrote one day, which it would be crazy if someone just wrote this mumbo jumbo, because this would be a 2,000 plus mumbo jumbo book that 49 plus different authors would have contributed to. Not, I don't think it's exactly 49, but it's around that number. It's like between 30 and 49 or 50 people, right? So that'd be first of all, do you know how difficult it is to be an author of anything? Let alone to be an author who works with multiple other people, not just multiple, like 50, 20 plus other people, and it all makes sense. Like it all makes sense. It all lines up. It's not all fragmented pieces that don't make sense and that don't click together. It's not one week we're talking about Jesus, the next week we're talking about Muhammad. One week we're talking about Muhammad, the next week we're talking about Buddha. It all lines up. It all makes sense. It all snaps together, right? And again, for those of you who sit there and doubt the Bible, there are plenty of people who are scholars who have studied it for accuracy. This isn't just Christians, this is atheists. There were atheists who studied the Bible and said, I can't sit here and like in good conscience disagree with everything that happens here. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do what the Bible tells me to do because I don't want to do it. But I can't sit here and say the Bible is completely, a bunch of BS. It lines up with a lot of stuff that happens in history. And again, like I said, do your research. Is the Bible historically accurate with stuff that happened? And it is. Okay, well, if the Bible's historically accurate, maybe I should look into it. Yes, you should. Look into it. If you disagree with the Bible, go ahead and read it. See why you disagree with it. Think about why you disagree with it. Read into it. Am I disagreeing with it for the right reason? Am I sure I disagree with it? Or what? So many questions. I love questions because questions lead to answers. Questions also lead to curiosity. And curiosity can lead to truth. Which I think for the most part, everyone here cares about the truth. For the most part. I mean, of course, don't get me wrong, people will turn away from the truth if it doesn't benefit them. But at least, for the most part, we care about the truth. For example, you care if your car actually works. You care if the person who says they're going to protect you is actually going to protect you. You care if the person you call friend actually is your friend and isn't someone trying to kill you or rob you. So for the most part, I think most humans care about truth. And the Bible is truth. And if you don't believe it's the truth, investigate as to why. For example, if you don't believe your friend is actually your friend, you got to have evidence. You got to investigate it. You got to figure out why he's not your friend. You can't just make up an assumption because you didn't like what he said one day or because you didn't like how he read a certain chapter or whatever or how he said something, right? You got to do research. So if you disagree with the Bible, read it. That's it.